We're here to talk about collaboration and impact. Collaborate and impact. And our panel today is going to focus on the collaboration. We're going to be talking about the relationship building of collaboration, that aspect of collaboration between nonprofits and the funders. How can each of you in your nonprofits collaborate, build relationships with potential funders? And we know people fund what they believe in. So how can you build the relationship, keep the relationship strong, even in the face of a rejection, and thereby collaborate with your potential funders, which hopefully will become your funders?
Kind of like star grantees versus ones that are a bit more difficult.
Yeah, we want to be star grantees.
Yes, are just those who
grantees.
communicate, explain that there are delays in the project, often, most of the time for very legitimate reasons.
So I'd say take the onus and agency to reach out to us and share updates in the interim.
This is your opportunity to really understand who it is you're going to be meeting with. And you should be meeting with the foundation that you want to get to know, or go to an event where you know that they're going to be. And you should know enough about, number one, their mission, the kind of grants that they do, because when you talk about the work that you want to do, it has to fit within the strategy of that foundation. But I'll tell you, even more than that, you need to look at the language on that website.
And are you starting to hear the parallel between your individual giving and your potential institutional funding? Who goes into a first meeting with a potential donor and solicits them? It just doesn't happen. You have to get to know them. So Amy's advising, not only do your research, but very well, your first meeting ought not be the pitch. And again, parallel with your, similar to the work you're doing in individual fundraising.
Think about the relationship from the point of view of how can I be helpful? What is the funder going through? How can we make their lives easier while also maximizing our impact? So it's not just about I need this from you. I want to get X, get Y, but okay, how can we create a conversation? How can we make your life easier? So I think starting from that.
And doesn't that sound like something you would ask, maybe not in those exact words, but parallel, again, in your individual fundraising?
I think setting an expectation up front is super helpful.
How approachable would you say you are?
So I would say just keep at people, find out where those funders in those spaces go. When we attend conferences and other things, you catch people in a different mindset. They're not running to meetings, they're not doing their grant write-up. So I would say catching people in different spaces as opposed to the cold call is one avenue you could employ.
Okay.
And I would just say as both a do and a don't is because in Power we are open to hearing from prospective organizations, but do your homework ahead of time.
So doing research.
Honestly, high quality pictures of the work that you're doing, if you have a really active social media page. And the reason is that we are not an endowed foundation, so we report to our donors about the work that we're supporting. And it's really helpful, and unfortunately, some of the grantees that get featured the most are those that have really great documentation of their own work. So not every organization can hire its own photographer, that's for sure, but I think that's a good niche that maybe a volunteer who wants to come learn more about your program, if they have photography skills, could be a really great way just to raise awareness about the work that you're doing. And
Can I suggest that maybe it doesn't have to be high production value to be moving and show impact?
Make sure your funders are on your email list. So when you send out everything about programmatic aspects or big announcements, that all of your funders are getting those updates. That way you can focus on your work, and that way the funders are also updated.
Follow them on Twitter. Follow your funders on Twitter. I mean, it sounds basic, but it might get overlooked.
Once you have the grant, the other thing is to consider me as a part of the team. So include us in convenings, invite us. We may or may not be able to go, but we also have the ability to write and speak. I've given congressional testimony on behalf of grantees. You know, we can provide you with more than just grant support. We can actually provide you with elbow grease. We can be helpful to you. We can even bring other funders to the table. So the more you engage with us as a grantee, the more helpful I can be for you.
It's just a meet in person. So for Anthony and I had breakfast today before we came here, and we try to make it a point to remember that, like, for organizations, companies, there's a person there that you're talking to who, like, maybe just got married, or so to also build a relationship around the person, not just the institution.
Go ahead, Anthony.
So on the corporate side, it's about being, you guys being flexible, right? Because yeah, I can support you through grant making and providing volunteers, but there's also other opportunities.
That I love, that I don't think that maybe a lot of grantees would think to say, please introduce us to your other funders. You might think that is an overreach or going past, but I think you can get a read on that relationship once it reaches that tipping point.
That's something I'm sure a lot of organizations just wouldn't even think to do. Introduce us to your other funders. Yeah, we'll come back. Just a couple of sentences. Don't do this. Your top, don't do this.
Yeah, the worst thing that you can do is when you have an opportunity to get funding, to listen to the funder about what it is you should be funding. In other words, don't move from your mission. If it's not helpful to your mission and strategy, it's a disaster.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's it.
I'm gonna just, I'll answer this from my previous foundation experience. One thing was, don't get angry when you get, when you get defunded. So there was, one of the things that was very difficult was for a funder is to not fund again. That's very hard, I think, I'm sure everyone here knows. And to have to send out a declination is also hard. To have that be met with anger and accusation, not great.
Anthony?
I would say don't go into your automatic pitch, right? Because we have objectives, you have objectives. So it goes just back to what we've been saying, doing research and not just assuming, oh, American Express is such a big company with so much money that we would necessarily support. I'm sure your mission is important, but it might be something that we're not, is not within our guidelines that we would support. So not just going into your pitch and assuming that we're gonna support it.
Okay. Dan, don't do it.
Miss deadlines.
Miss deadline.
Yeah, don't miss deadlines. You can ask for an extension. Don't do it 11:59 the day of. But in my over 4 years in philanthropy, I know exactly those organizations that I think are going to fall through the cracks unless our team reminds them. And I feel like that's a perception issue. It happens with individuals. You all know that one person that made a bad impression in your family or at work, and that perception then permeates and then stays. So just have a schedule, have reminders, have your assistants remind you, whatever. But yeah, don't miss deadlines.
Please, there's so many technical tools that can help you, do everything from wake up to know when to go to sleep, everything in between. So, use the apps, use the tools we have.
One I would say is don't fall off the face of the earth. So we've had some grantees just disappear, and not communicate. And I would say even if it's a one line, again, in Mexico, right after the earthquake, we reached out to grantees, how are you doing? So, we're in the trenches, but thank you for thinking of us, boom. Or, where is your report? I'm sorry, there have been delays. Just keep the communication open.
So please, let's join me in thanking. It's Anthony Sanchez, Christine Kang, Amy Berman, Dan Werner, and Caitlin Mitchell. Please join us. Thank you. Awesome. hope you see all the connections between your individual fundraising and your newly invigorated institutional fundraising program.